Oh, hi. How are you?
Finding you.
Everyone,
I'm back.
to the Math Action Podcast, y'all.
Huh?
Welcome back.
Nice seeing you again.
Yeah, we're gonna just let a few more people try to tune in. Hopefully, this thing's gonna be simulcast on Facebook Live and YouTube. So we're trying to upgrade our technical capacity here, little by little. Basically, I want to welcome everybody to the podcast. This week we got a special, a few things we want to discuss. One is the thing that's looming, the Derek Chauvin trial, which is underway, and we're waiting for our guests to join, but we are getting a firsthand account from Minneapolis, and one of our longtime associates, Mel Reeves, who's done a previous podcast, but he because he's a journalist, he's been able to get access to the courtroom, so he should have some firsthand reporting from the courtroom. We might hear from another family member from Minneapolis, and we also hope to hear from one of the cities that participated in demonstrations over the past weekend, and we're going to just show a little bit of the footage that took place in some of the cities around the country. So, let's see right here. I'm gonna maybe set that up. We'll just wait a couple more minutes for people to get on, and there's some breaking news that we want to discuss with our guest from Minneapolis. Here we go. Here's our guest, Mel Reeves, joining us. So before I'm gonna welcome Mel Reeves to the call, and then we'll just watch a little bit of the coverage. Hey Mel, got a background noise there. All right, Mel, if you can hear me, this is Brock. I'm one of the organizers of Mass Action Against Police Brutality. For those of you that don't know, we are hosting this event. We host it every week. It's basically a movement-run podcast by, for, and of the movement. All the analysis of unfolding events. It's coming from those that are actually out here trying to build and lead this mass movement, and also families who are in the throes of battles with the courts and for justice. That's what you're going to get on this podcast on a weekly basis. We also delve into historical stuff, so we're trying to deepen our understanding. We have Mel Reeves here, and before he gets on, we're going to try to ask you a few questions about, some of the unfolding events around the trial. I'm just going to show a little video here. It's about 18 minutes long, actually, but it's just going to wrap up a little bit of what was going on in some of the cities that participated in this nationwide demonstration, mass action for George Floyd, justice for all. Y'all, I'm going to share that and see if we can get this going. All right.
For the citizens. What we've seen with the uprising with George Floyd was not the result of only one man's life. It was the result of tired of mourning and pleading and crying for changes to be made, to be ignored. They tell us that they are reaching out to the communities. The mayors, they say that they're reaching out to the communities, but who has reached out to our hurting families? There is a reparation board that helps families that lose a loved one to police. They help them with mental health services. They help with, if the person had children, $400 a month until they're 18. And they help with the funeral costs. But if your loved one is killed by a civilian, it is assumed that your loved one is not a victim and that they did something to deserve the murder that happened. So we do not qualify for those services. We have families that have gone homeless, and we're left out in the community with any services after they murder our loved ones in cold blood. I am going to let each family, every family is going to introduce themselves and introduce their loved ones today. We will also have a scroll with all of the names of the people that have lost their lives here in the state of Minnesota that have not received justice. My name, again, is Tashira Garraway. I am the fiance and the mother of Justin Tigan's 14-year-old son. Justin Tigan was brutally beat to death by the St. Paul police and thrown inside of a trash dumpster August 19, 2009. I have been harassed and followed. I am afraid for my life. Many other families have been harassed. They are afraid for their life. These people are dangerous. They're still out here in the community, and they're walking free. Thank you, and we're going to have the next family come forward. To be with what's right or with what's wrong. That's why we're here at the government.
And let me add.
Be honest. You're not going to support us behind the scenes. You're either with the people or you're with the institution that is killing the people, that is hurting the community, that has caused this divide. So choose today. Choose today. Are you going to be with what's right or with what's wrong? That's why we're here at the government.
Black life matters. My black life matters. My black life matters. Yeah. My black life matters. My black life matters. My black life matters. Justice matters, just us. Targeting our race, form, color, discuss us. In the beginning, God created a black man from dust. Every color bird shout just like crust on a pie. But we are like the cream of the crop. You never see the cream at the bottom, but on top. My black life matters, then the hell is drunk. I'm a queen on the scene, can't please stop. You step up in the face, you know the king is black. I'm not talking about the clock, but I'm talking about my rock. Jesus is the rock of my salvation. He died for the whole creation. Yeah. My black life matters. My black life matters. My black life matters. My black life matters. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ingrid Smyrna, and my son Andrew Jr. Smyrna was shot 7 to 9 bullets by a Georgia State trooper on January 23, 2020. The district attorney did not charge the officer because he claimed he feared for his life. This is a script that the police use because it aligns with their policy and procedure. I'm joining in the protest for George Floyd's case because I'm experiencing the same grief that his family is going through. I would like to see the officer involved in his murder be convicted. I would like for all police brutality cases across the United States where the police officer has not been charged to be reopened for review. We must call for district attorneys to be removed from deciding police cases if they do not have the ability to separate themselves from the politics of policy and truly assess each individual case with a non-biased lens. We must hold our state attorney generals responsible for assessing police brutality cases where the use of deadly force has not been addressed by the district attorney. Last but not least, the police policy and procedure need to be clearly defined to state what constitutes fear for life and what represents deadly force. Again, I join in solidarity with this protest, and I'm praying for George Floyd's family and for George Floyd to find justice for his life. Thank you. God bless.
Of what we are dealing with. It is a system that we are dealing with. And that system has a whole lot of power, right? However, say that with me. However, the power belongs to the people.
The power belongs to the people.
Power belongs to the people.
Power belongs to the people.
Listen, what do you mean? I mean, every time we go vote, we have the opportunity to place some power that supports us in those seats. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about accountability, but we haven't really specified what that looks like. For us, it is police officers being arrested, convicted, and sent to prison. Just like they do other black and brown bodies, they deserve to be in a cell, being held accountable for the murders that they have committed in our community. That's what accountability looks like. And we're not going to settle for anything less. I will never stand anywhere else and convince anybody that my child was human. That's not my job. I'm not here to sell you on my son. I know my son. And my other one stands right here behind me. I know how I raised my kids. And at the end of the day, none of that matters. None of that matters. Why? Why is everybody else allowed to have due process and our children are not? Why? Are there black and brown bodies that much of a threat?
Mm-hmm.
Are they that much of a threat? The unfortunate answer is yes. And it's always been that way. But again, we have the power and the opportunity to change some things. And it is going to take us coming together to do that. Miss Cynthia talked coming. We know that already. Anything that shakes the system as it is now is going to get pushed back. We have to be ready. We have to be armed with the communication. So as we push this out, please get involved. Please educate your communities, because we come from so many diverse communities. And again, it is necessary for us all to be on the right side of history this time. We have the opportunity to be on the right side of history. And the right side of history, I will end with this. Accountability. Arrest. Convict. And send these police officers to jail. A 6x9 cell is good enough for our men, it's good enough for them too. God bless y'all.
All right.
Lost loved ones. We need convictions. They need to convict the police, send them behind bars, just like if we shot somebody on the street, we'd be right behind bars. As soon as they caught us, we'd be behind bars. It's not right, and that's what I'm going for, is conviction. For them to pay for what they've done to our families and what they did to my son.
That trial.
I just hope that they convict the officers as clear as day what they did to George right there on camera. You know, there's no excuses. I'm tired of the excuses and the lies that they make up about people. Okay, even if they did do something, they still had their own chance to go in front of a judge to clear his name, to say if he's guilty or not. It's not up to that officer to do what he did. So I really hope that they convict them officers. All of them that was there to watch. Because even the ones that stay quiet, you're just as guilty as the rest. And it comes to the judges too. It starts with the judges. They're just as guilty. Just like with them signing warrants, no-knock raid warrants, without really knowing, you know, they're part of the reason that our families lose their lives too. So it starts with the judges too. Right. They all work together and they all sit down at the table together, and something needs to be done. It needs to be a change, because when it comes to their loved ones, somebody be behind bars, but then I don't know, because there was a cop killed who killed another cop, and sometimes they get away with it. Like, they just got too much immunity, and that immunity needs to go away. They need to pay.
What was it?
I said he was killed in his own home in front of my father. 93 shots, 24 in his body. Like for what? You know, it's like they assassinated him, and they knew exactly what they were doing. And then at the end of the day, there's always no cameras or nothing. I've told them I'm not going nowhere. I guess they're gonna have to kill me because I'm standing tall on my son's justice, and I'm not going nowhere. And any other family needs to do the same. Like, they killed their loved ones. Don't be scared, because if we come together as one, they're gonna be scared of us.
So my heart goes out to George Floyd's family. And I hope that this can stop. The genocide can stop across the planet in all directions. When my son was taken on a Saturday evening, it happened to be winter solstice. And I have a whole new understanding of the longest night of the year. And after that, he came back several times with messages to different ones, not necessarily just his mom. One of those messages was, "What happened to me will continue to escalate across this planet until people rise up as one." And I have sat back and I have watched his words come to fruition, his message come to fruition. And I hope that I can see the day when it all stops. I hope I can live to see that moment where humanity is one.
People gathering in Boston to protest police brutality. They're calling for change, with similar rallies being held all across the country. So is Mlk March is live in Boston this evening. The very latest. Michael.
Hey, Justin, today tens of dozens of people gathered here in the South and filling this park as they raise their voices together against police brutality.
We need accountability, we need transparency, we need justice.
Families impacted by police violence rallying for justice and change.
Reopen the cases! No justice, no peace!
Dozens joining together with the organization Mass Action Against Police Brutality.
This is part of a nationwide demonstration
Rallies like this happening across the country ahead of the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who is charged in the 2020 death of George Floyd. Chauvin is accused of kneeling on Floyd's head and neck for nearly 8 minutes on May 25th of last year.
The central demands of this nationwide demonstration are jail the killer cops, prosecute the police.
Saturday in Boston, the families of Terrence Coleman and Justin Root adding their voices to the calls for change. Coleman, who had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, was shot and killed by police in 2016 after his mother called paramedics to her home. Prosecutors say Coleman attacked EMTs with a knife, but his mother says he wasn't armed. The district attorney at the time said the officer's use of deadly force was justified. Justin Root was killed in February of 2020 after he showed what appeared to be a firearm at police, but it turned out to be an air pistol and 2 paintball guns. That happening outside of Brigham and Women's Hospital. Root was then shot and killed by police after he fled into Brookline. The district attorney clearing all the officers who shot Root.
I suffer every single day. It's a hole in my heart.
Demonstrators now wanting all cases of police brutality reopened.
Governor Baker and Attorney General Maura Healey, take action, reopen the cases for independent investigations. We deserve it and the public deserves it.
And jury selection for the trial of Derek Chauvin is scheduled to begin on Monday. Reporting live in Boston tonight, Mike Oshidis, 7 News.
Give yourselves a round of applause.
Big up yourselves. Thank you. Thank you to the marshals. Marshals. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
George Floyd. Derek Chauvin. George Floyd. Brian, please. Terrence Coleman. Justin Root. Killer Cop. Samuel Reed. Boston Police. Bill Nelson.
Yay!
Boston Police.
Nope.
Rasta Tisa.
Right?
Derek Chauvin.
Nope.
George Floyd.
Nope.
Killer Cop.
Nope.
Killer Cop. Yep. Killer Cop. Stop being so racist.
What?
You're on mute, Brock.
Sorry, buddy. Thank you. We just we have a few special guests here on the call right now that we want to hear from, but that was just a little bit of a wrap up of what happened over the weekend. I didn't get all the footage, so we're still gathering some of that. But you got a little flavor of the national character of this action, and before we get into that, because we have Tawanda here from the Baltimore crew. Are you on the call, Tawanda?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. We just want to take a few. We want to ask a few questions to Mel Reeves, who's here from Minneapolis first, before we talk about March 6th, just to get a little update on what's going on. I don't know if you were able to get inside the trial courtroom, but just want to get a sense of what's happening in Minneapolis, any kind of updates around the trial. And I know you've written a couple articles about it, in particular, like the almost military preparations on behalf of the city in relationship to the court, and also more recently, just some of your opinions based on the voir dire process of interviewing the prospective jurors, what you thought we can expect about this trial. So,
yeah. In fact, as I keep trying to get Brock to do it, but I wanted to promote my blog, so we blogging. But the little old newspaper that I run, y'all, I want you to write it down. The Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, especially you, Tawanda, put it in your thing, because I'm coming to you at some point, because I'm putting Brock on blast, because Brock and Brian have been assigned to write a story about what we're talking about, why it's important that people begin to support their families, a story that also talks about what the families are doing, story that talks about what happened March 6th, but talk about why it's important to fight for prosecution of the police and reopening the cases. You feel me, Tawanda?
Absolutely. I definitely feel you.
So we got to get it out there. I got a newspaper that people are paying attention to because they're right here. And I'm writing my behind off. So look, spokesman recorder. You might want to look up, put in your search, because I searched kind of sucks, but you may find it. You'll find it out. Put Fortress Minneapolis, and that's the first story I did. I'm going to talk about it now. It's called Fortress Minneapolis. City violence baits the community. Somebody can write it in the chat. Maybe I'll find. You know what I'll do even better? I'll link it. Then the last one I did, the Not So Calm Before the Storm, and it's both on my site, the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. It's owned by a black woman, and it's not my paper, but she's giving me a lot of leeway, as Brock will tell you. And so I'm getting to talk about what's going on as it really is, and it's getting shared quite a bit. So if you really want to get an idea of what's going on here, go to the Spokesman Recorder and go to my blog is fightthepowerjournal.com, and I'll send that out too as well. But anyway, so let me kind of get at it. So the reason I wrote that article and I called it violence baiting, I was saying they were violence baiting because what they were doing is they were two things. They were projecting onto with all these fortifications. You just see it. They got like an old school moat where they got barbed wire in the middle of it. So like there's one fence that has barbed wire, another fence with barbed wire. In the middle of it, there's a moat with razor wire. So if you jump one of the fences, you're gonna wind up in a razor wire. So they've got all this serious fortification, and I think some of the pictures on our website catches some of it, so you can see it. The federal building, the city hall, and the Hennepin County Government Center, where the trial is taking place, they're like they're lined up like on 3 different streets, right? But they're how do I want to say it? They're like what's the word I'm looking for? They're lined up almost. They're even with each other on different streets, right? So it's like one behind the other, and all of them are fortified, fenced off. The federal building's fenced off, the city hall's fenced off, and the government center. The government center is fenced off now with a gate. So only way you can get in is you have to come in and check in with the people at the gate, and at the gate are National Guardsmen with the black assault guns, y'all. You got to see this to really get a grasp. I'm trying to paint the picture, but imagine you going to court, and in order to get in, you've got to go through a security checkpoint, pretty much. So there's 3. So when you first walk in the gate, you have to show them your ID. Yeah, that's the story. You have to show them your ID, and you've got National Guards people to your left and to your right. When you walk down that, you can see that. See the barricades, and you see the fences there. Well, this is not the right one. I think we have a Brock. Show the picture. There it is. Look at this, y'all. That's razor wire. That's razor wire between 2 barbed wire fences. So what are they preparing for? You see how crazy it looks? And so this is what you see when you go downtown. This is what that whole several blocks look like. You see that, how far that goes, and the fencing goes a ways. And so it sends the message that we're violent. That's why I said they're violence baiting us, because they send the message that we're violent, and they're also saying that, listen, if you're really fighting for police violence, what you're really doing is, that you're about violence, and you're not really about, trying to make real change. And so they projected it onto the community instead of them being violent. They're saying that we're violent. And then today at the press conference, they announced the settlement of $27 million for the Floyd family. The mayor got up and hypocritically said, he tried to play it off and say, well, the fencing was to keep out the white supremacists. I kid you not. He said, because of the last protest, he said, this is to keep the white supremacists from hijacking our rallies. I mean, he thinks people are crazy, but that's what he said. And folks are going crazy on Facebook now, going after him. But, our mayor is the smoothest cat in the world. I think you all had one that was, Boston had one that was really smooth at one time. That dude Flynn was pretty smooth. But yeah, you all. So they're making it difficult for us to protest on some level. But, I said to folks, we'll just protest in the street, which is what we've done. Because they didn't want, they roped off the government center. If you ever see a protest here, and I should have had Brock key one up, most of our protests are in that government center. Brock has probably had lots of protests in the government center square, right? It's a big old square, y'all. big old area. It sits back off the street a ways, and there's a big like patio and places where people can sit, and folks cook out there sometimes. It's a perfect place for a protest. And so they've roped it off. Though we had a protest there on was it Sunday? They protested there anyway, but I don't want to have no protest there because there's gates on both sides, so you have to go through a gate, and it's like if they decide to, they can lock you into that sucker. So anyway, so that's what it looks like, and what they're doing is they're not dealing with the police's issue. And one of my friends, Michelle Gross, said that they got the razor wire in the wrong place. She said they need to put the razor wire around the police station to keep in the killers. So so that's what it looks like. So the trial itself. So I went in. I was actually able to sit in the trial because they have a pool of reporters. So since COVID, you can't. They can only get like 2 people in the courtroom, and so we had to rotate. So they actually gave our little paper some juice as well, because what you all may not know is that our newspaper is located 4 blocks from where George Floyd was killed. Like literally, well, probably a little less than 4 blocks from where George Floyd was killed. If you saw an aerial photo of the square, I can show you where our little office is. And so that gave us a little cachet. And then, of course, we were writing our butts off, as you know. And then back then, I could actually write editorials. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to sneak editorials in again. But I was writing my butt off. And so anyway, so they gave us a seat. So I was in there on Wednesday. And in order to get to the court, I had to go through 3 checkpoints. And the first 2, there were National Guardsmen there with assault rifles. That's what this looks like. And then you have to go upstairs, and there's security up there. So anyway, getting to the trial thing. So it's like, and it's good that you can watch that. Y'all can see this. What you can really see what this court system is really all about. It's not about justice. It's a game. It's about trying to prove one thing or the other. That's why people in the hood say that they caught a case, because it's really a game on some level. They will get you or they can't. And what's become really obvious to anybody paying attention to the trial is that it's not about right and wrong. In fact, the lawyers keep saying it. What if you come to a conclusion that violates all your principles? They said all your morals, all your values. Can you still base your judgment on the instructions given to you by the judge? Think about that. Right? Think about this. The court system is an alternate universe. So, right, they're setting it up so that they're saying that Chauvin didn't really kill George Floyd, right? But according to the rules that Chauvin's, is guided by as a cop, he may not have actually killed George Floyd. It's kind of what they're coming at. It's crazy. And so the other important thing about the trial, if you pay attention, is that the state and the defense have an interest in maintaining the system. They have interest, and you'll see the questioning sometime. Both the state and the defense talk about people being good on the job and people being bad on the job. They talk about good cops and bad cops, both the state and the defense. And I think it's because they know you're watching, and they're propagandized. The trial is a piece of propaganda for the state, but also it's a piece of propaganda for us, because now you can see this is a system that acts so high and mighty, and it's not based on any kind of morality. They even said, it's like you got to convict based on these rules that we have transcribed, right? And I'm not doing a good job of explaining this, but we all know that this. I mean, everybody said it today in court, right? So let's pretend like it was somebody murdered somebody, and you say, well, all evidence says they killed him, right? And so you got to prove it, right? He's innocent. But here we have a situation where we all know he killed him. You know what I'm saying? So on some level, the trial should be a formality. When we make a revolution and make a new system, if you kill somebody, we give you a hearing. You know what I'm saying? And part of the hearing is, this is what we saw you do. You're guilty. We'll holler at you later. You know what I'm saying? But this system is trying to say, well, yeah, we everybody saw him kill him, but now we've got a trial where we're going to try to prove that what you saw you didn't really see. It's crap. So that's what's going on in trial. What are the other ports? So much going on, Brock, that it's hard for me to concentrate. But those things are important that they talk about. The state and the defense are definitely propagandizing the public. Now, another interesting thing that's going on is that the people are nervous now about the trial because they settled with with Floyd's family. Y'all heard about it, right? $27 million. So, in fact, Cameron Clark, who's one of the brothers of Jamar Clark, called me earlier. He said, Mel, they're not going to convict him. I go, no, I think they're going to convict him of at least a manslaughter charge. But I get his point because he's like, the jurors are going to be thinking, well, dude got paid. He got a modicum of justice. So now we're off the hook. So it's going to be wild. So 3 of the 7 jurors, you all, have friends or relatives who are the police, right? And so they're gonna. So yeah, the bourgeois press is going. Yeah, you can't make this up. They got. I mean, you would think that the defense was, the prosecution would say, no, you got the black girl, the biracial mixed girl, has an uncle who's a cop. Now this is Minnesota, so Brock understands this well. So we got a girl now, and she looks about Brock's complexion. So she's about Brock's, or maybe a little lighter, right? So she's clearly a black woman, right? So the white people who were in court that day couldn't figure it out, right? They said, well, maybe she looks, and in fact, they're calling her multiracial. Let me tell you what it is. She's black and white. I could be wrong, or she could be black, white, and Indian, okay? And so she grew up outside of Bemidji. And you know what that's like, Brock. So she grew up in the country, and I think raised pretty much by white folks. So she's come here, and it's pretty funny. I was listening to her testimony, her thing, and she didn't even have any black friends. But she's black. She didn't even have any people of color who were friends. In fact, when they asked her about what she thought about racism, she said, "Well, I don't know much about it. I have a friend, a person of color who's a friend of me." It's hilarious, right? So, but they're gonna count her as a black person. You see how this works? And then the other black person is a West African who, when they in the questionnaire, he said he was talking to his wife, who I kind of assume might be white, and he was saying that she was saying, "Well, that could have been you," meaning as a black person. Then his response was, "No, that can be anybody." And listen to his voir dire. He's an immigrant that hasn't had a whole lot of African American experience. He thinks the cops are there to protect him. You see where I'm going? So they're going to put people in the jury, and they may not get another black person, but the kind of black people they're going to put on the jury are the people who see things like white people do, for lack of a better expression, or like conservative, not conservative, but even middle of the road white. But then they're culturally white, is what I'm trying to say. And real interesting, y'all get a kick out of this. If y'all watched it the other day, I'm sure you laugh. Then when they had the black woman on there, you could tell it was a black woman. And she said, no, I can't unsee what I saw. And they kept asking, well, if the judge gives you the instruction, and she said, yeah, I can go along with that. And then when they thought they had her, she says, I can agree with everything you said. She says, but I can't dismiss the facts. So, they told her to toodaloo. And then a young white woman came on yesterday and ate them alive. She says, no, I can't be impartial. She said, I saw the video. She says, and so she right up says, I can't be impartial. She says it right up front. So they try it, right? And this is part of them propagandizing us. So they ask her a few questions, and she said, no. She said, I cannot, I can't see it your way. She says, I can't, no, I'm not going to do it. And she says, I've been working with underprivileged kids and that kind of thing. And she said, to try to see it your way would be, what'd she say? It would be offensive to the young people I work with. I assume she works with black, so they had to let her go. But it was funny. She pretty much said, no, I cannot be impartial. I saw that video. I know what I know. And she was very adamant about it, that I know what I know. They were trying to talk to her, and she says, no, I'm not going to change my mind. And there have been a few jurors who've been really straight up and saying that, look, from what I saw, it was a murder. Now, also, and I'll stop talking at this point. So they gave him a questionnaire. What's really fascinating about this is the questionnaire was taken in December, and this is 3 months later, right? So the question, just about all the jurors, just about all the prospective jurors, this is interesting. Just about all of them condemned the killing of George Floyd, right? Just about, and every one of them had a negative view of Chauvin. So think about how interesting that is. Even the people who have more conservative bent saw this as a crime, right? Now, 3 months later, some of them have kind of tempered their perspective, but they all clearly saw this as a crime, right? So it's pretty interesting how the state is trying to get people to see things differently. But seems like everybody answered that questionnaire. Some people were, more serious about what it, but even the people who seem more conservative pretty much, talked about, Derek Chauvin kept his knee on George Floyd's neck, that he should have taken his knee off. In other words, most of these folks are working class and they have working class sensibilities, and they clearly see this as a crime. So I think even with getting more conservative folks on the jury. The more I think about it, I still think that the prosecution, I mean, the defense is going to have a tough time getting him off. I do. So, and that you all should ask me questions because there's so much stuff surrounding this thing.
All right. Well, before we get into some of these questions, I want to bring Tawanda on to say a few words. Tawanda is one of the organizers, leaders, and family members in Baltimore, whose brother Tyrone West was killed by the police in, was it 2011?
It was 2013.
2013, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get, you helped organize a demonstration in on March 6th, and I know you've been part of this nationwide effort. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how it went in Baltimore, and also just kind of why you think it's important. And going forward, I know we're talking about something big in May 24th. So I don't know if you could comment on any of that.
Okay. Thank you, Brock. And how's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody's doing great. But again, I'm just sick of the Doug and Pony show because the first thing I saw when I got in the house was the foolishness with George Floyd family and then with the $27 million. Like it's this is the real modern day purging, like literally. If you watch the movie The Purge, when they thought the government was cleansing and killing black folks, and it's just crazy, and then offering them money to kill them, it's the same thing. It's equivalent. The Doug, you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, moving right on because I'm looking at that because their timing be immaculate. Because just like even in Freddie Gray's case, who happened here in my city, 2 years after my brother was murdered, and my family been on the street literally. Like this week coming up, West Wednesday will be 399 weeks. We've been out there nonstop protesting, rain, sleet, or snow. Killer cops must go. Cell blocks for killer cops. That's always been our just from day one. Literally, it's still out just now, even though we're in COVID times and a lot of things now are online. So we actually kind of, just for safety's sake, put West Wednesday online, but that's totally out of our venue because we're on the streets in the booths. But nevertheless, to answer your question, we did a demonstration here in Baltimore, which was really great. We invited families, like literally not just from Baltimore City, but some families like from around. Because to me, it's not a city thing; it's a worldwide thing, And some of my sisters from DC, some of my sisters from Prince Georgia County. They came and they gave powerful testimony while the media was there. We did a caravan where we were actually playing music and we had the media follow us like from one point to the next, and we wound up going to our city hall here and having the family members speak out with the support of, the people that came to support us, and it was really powerful. We and all of our demands was, and I made sure that was front center. Reopen the cases because nobody never wants to talk about that. They feel like, to me, and even in my own brother's case, literally before my brother, like when my brother was murdered, right before, like we were set, like our trial was set, like not even less than a week, within like 72 hours. Like we had our court date set in federal court, and I was ready to go. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm ready to go and give it to him. And the saddest part, like immediately the prosecutor here in our city, and that's why we got him out with West Wednesday. We told nobody not to vote for him. And we actually backed, and I'm kind of embarrassed, we backed Marilyn Mosley.
That's okay.
I'm definitely embarrassed. I'm kind of hiding. That's why I got the video on my face, the photo, the still photo, because I'm actually hiding under my cover saying I got this woman in office. But nevertheless, we were the ones to get her in office and got racist Greg Bernstein out of office. But I said all that to say immediately before the civil trial, because I wanted to basically get all the evidence from the civil trial to actually get a criminal trial. I'm not concerned about the money, but literally they settled out with my family 72 hours before we were supposed to go to court. They try to offer me $1 million for myself and my brother children $1 million. I told them, take their money and stick it where the sun don't shine. They're not going to craft my language because it was a non-disparagement clause that would basically say that I could not talk about any of the killer cops personally. Like I could talk about them without saying their names. I told the devil a lie. I'm gonna call them out, and not only am I gonna call them out, I'm calling y'all out too. And I had a damn news press conference immediately following, and I made them retract because it was so funny. Literally, and that's how they do families, especially poor black families that they need their damn money or whatever. They actually tried to use one because they knew we had been protesting for years, but they actually had used my face where I was protesting out on the street. I think I was on Greenmount Avenue. I had my sign up, and then they had me plastered all over these. Oh, the West family settles out for $1 million, and I said, oh, y'all better retract that. Sugar honey iced tea, because I ain't settle out for nothing. And immediately they apologized. They took it down and all that. And the crazy part, they'll do that, throw you under the bus, throw your whole family under the bus, and you gotta wait months later, damn near a year later, to even get anything. And meanwhile, everybody, all the crooks in the hood trying to rob you. They think you got some money that you ain't even get yet. It's just sad. You can't make this stuff up. So immediately what I did was through my passion and care. My passion and care has really gotten me a lot of places, me and my family. And I said that because I care so much about my brother, and I really have a true passion and desire to hold killer cops in the cell blocks. I don't give a damn how many years it's going to take. I don't care what it's going to take, but something got to shake. And that's my position, and it has always been my position. And it's very important now while we got the world looking, while they're doing a Doug and Pony show that they always do. Like, it's crazy. Like right before a big case, especially, and even if you're so lucky to get to see a criminal case, they'll throw the money out first, and that's the way so that way, sweet America, that this capitalist system to say, well, you know what? Because I remember, oh my God, I'll never forget, and we changed mayor and we changed mayor and commissioners like I changed my shoes and pocketbooks. We changed them daily. So nevertheless, our old man Catherine Pugh, the one that's locked up now for doing all the money, she did the same thing the white people did, but they threw this old lady under the bus because you can't do the same thing that a white person do. You got to know the connection and the complexion is to the connection, and she ain't had the right complexion. So I said all that to say, but right before she went to jail for a Healthy Holly scandal, I actually met with her trying to hold her accountable and see if she could help me get accountability for my brother. She invited me and the West Coalition and my family members to a breakfast and things like that. I mean, a high class breakfast. This lady had steak, eggs, the top shelf, but I wasn't interested in that breakfast. I wanted to see why all of a sudden now that you're in office, you don't remember who I am, my brother is, but we the one, when you came to a West Wednesday to promote you to become the mayor, you're like, oh, well, if I become, I'm Sister Tawanda, I know you and I respect your work and I admire you, but if I ever become the mayor, not only am I going to give everybody in the city a $15 minimum wages, I'm definitely going to have your brother case reopen, revisit, because those officers need to be charged, talking all this good stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. This sister sound cool. As soon as she get in the office, they asked her, well, what you going to do? Are you going to hold your word? And I got this lady on video telling me this foolishness. As soon as she get in the office, who is Tawanda Jones? Who is Tyrone West? Ain't know me, ain't know my brother. So that day in the meeting, I wore a shirt of her at West Wednesday. I wore a shirt. I got a shirt blew up with her picture on the mic, and I had it on my T-shirt, and I'm sitting there with her. And then now she can recall. So as she eating her breakfast, she looking at me like, "Oh yeah, I remember you." But then she tried to throw me under the bus or whatever because she felt some type of way. She was like, "Yeah, your family did get justice." I'm like, what justice? What, did I miss something? Did I just fall off the elevator or come out of that crazy hospital? What justice did we get? Oh, your family got $1 million because I got the city solicitor to sign off on $1 million. And I pulled out the picture where they hacked up my brother, and I made her, she couldn't even eat her steak and eggs. And I pulled his autopsy picture that they never took the pictures that I took of my brother's hacked up body. And I showed it to her while she was in the middle of eating. And I said, excuse me, did this look like we got justice? And she couldn't even, like, she wiped her mouth, pushed her little uh, plate to the side. But I said all this to say, and I can go on all night. But the whole point, you have to stay on everybody's heels. And the saddest part is not just about the killer cops. It's about a whole damn system that works together. You got to talk about the medical examiner's office. I threw them underneath of the bus because those are the jokes that took 154 days to lie to my family and say, oh, your brother, he didn't die because He was attacked by 11 and 15 officers that beat him from one side of the street to the other side of the street. They pepper sprayed him, they tased him, they tortured him. He didn't die because of that. No, he died because he had a bad heart and he had exuberant strength and he just had a heart attack. Get out of here with the foolishness. So I went and took, and this is how serious I am. I went, as poor as I am, I went and took, I'm a teacher. I don't make any money. I make pennies. I'm in it because of the passion. I love the kids. I went to college to teach the babies because I love the babies. That's just that. Because to me, some things are priceless. That's the only reason why I stick in this field. I knew it wasn't money in there years ago when I got a degree not only in teaching, but I got also a degree in social work. But I didn't like to play with clients, so I immediately got out of social work at a young age. And I'm like, oh no, I gotta get another degree and do something that I love. I love children. Let me do the teaching thing. But long story short, I said all that to say that I took my own money, $50,000, to have my brother unearthed, to have a complete autopsy done to prove that my brother was murdered. And it wasn't until I did that, because at first they were trying to offer my family as if you could put a price on a life, as if I don't care if they offered us $27 million, I still wouldn't have took it. But the fact that if at the beginning they didn't even want to put it because they had a statutation limit or whatever, or the money caps and all this foolishness, but they try to offer my brother children $150,000. Like, you lost your mind. But then immediately when I got his body dug up and they proved that he was actually murdered, oh, now they want to take it up to $1 million. Now you want to settle out. Get out of here. But I said all that to say, this is a dirty ass system, excuse my language, but we have to fight it from every level, every how. It's no win to this. If one person could have won this thing, it would have been won years ago when Dr. King and them was out there getting slaughtered, spit on, and all that stuff, doing the same thing we're doing now. Nobody can reinvent the wheel, but the thing is, we can keep on advocating, because we know true change come when the people demand it and when the people hold up. And sometimes people got to down that front line for it, but that's when the real change on, when you don't waver. And they will kill you, they will come at you, they will do all type of stuff. I done woke up to many mornings of my car tires being slashed, to me getting threats, to all type of stuff. Like, just Google the name and you'll see all the hell that I done went through, from being lied on to all type of stuff. Like, it is real. The retaliation is real. And then recently, I'm gonna end on this note. In January the 20th, one of my cousins that was on the front line with me was executed. Literally no reason, dropping his daughter off and picked his daughter up from work, executed on a West Wednesday morning, and we still have no answers. And I'm not stupid. And like I told them, I'm starting at the Pig's Pen's house first, and that's the police department first. And I'm working my way around, because somebody's gonna tell my family something, because we know that my cousin wasn't in the street. He wasn't a street dude, And then it's like I tell everybody, with all these homicides going on in the city, we are so quick, we're so caught up in what they sell us, like what they give us. They always talk about, oh, black on black crime. I hate when people say that. It makes me sick. It's sickening. Whoever said, please don't let me hear you say it, because I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call you. I don't care who you are. I will call my pastor of my church out if he say black on black crime, because at the end of the day, keep this in mind. We know Caucasian kill Caucasians. That ain't white on white crime. Asians kill Asians. That ain't Asian on Asian crime. Why is it when community violence happens, it's black on black? That's just another way to throw us under the bus and say, your lives don't matter. Y'all stop killing each other so the police can everybody kill us. At the end of the day, it is all connected to the highway of hell. I don't give a damn what street you want to take. You either go to the highway, some take St. Paul, some take Calvert Street, or whatever, to get to the highway. The highway of hell is the system that's dirty, and it's wiping us out, and it's wiping black and brown people out first. And guess what? When we are gone, guess what? Who's left? They're going to wipe you out too. So join the fight, join the cause, keep your fists in the air, keep the pressure up, and we're not taking nothing short but cell blocks for killer cops. Thank y'all for letting me share.
Thanks,
if I can
hold on one second. Cell blocks for killer cops. That's killer cops and cell blocks. We're trying to make that a popular channel here in Boston. We definitely had it working in the March. So definitely thanks for that. We tell everybody what's wrong. I just wanted you, before Mel chimes in, and anyone else can ask a question or comment too, but I just wanted you to comment on one thing about the demands of this demonstration, because, there's a lot of people who are organizing protests in various cities. Some of them consider themselves abolitionists, so they think that that's like the forefront of this fight. They think that the main demand that's being pushed is defund the police, not prosecute the police, not jail the killer cops. I just wondered what you thought about that, whether you thought that was going to advance your fight. Tamara, did you hear that?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, brother?
Okay, I was just saying, like there's a lot of the protests going on, have different demands than the ones that we raised in this nationwide protest. There's people, many of them are young, but a lot of these protest organizers, some of them consider themselves abolitionists. And for them, jailing the cops or prosecuting the police isn't really the heart of or the center of what they're trying to do. The main demand that gets pushed is defund the police. I'm just wondering what you had to say about that, and how that demand, fits in with the other demands that you're talking about.
Yes. So again, I'll say that's all a part of the Doug and Pony show, and you got to be real careful who you let speak to you and speak around you and speak through the people. And that was basically clearly Reverend Al. That was a Reverend Al move. That's the first thing he started speaking, because when you got these fake people that act like they're for the people and they're only for themselves, they'll say anything. So what they'll say is whatever the government wants them to say, whatever they're paid to say, they're going to say it. So basically, when he came out and then they all have the same damn lawyer, Crump. I'm sick of seeing his face with every case. They have the same so-called freedom fighters. He's not even a real freedom fighter attorney. But then a lot of people that don't know that pain, they're like, oh my God, that's a black face. And they sound real good because you got them quoting scriptures out the Bible and everything. And I'm into God because literally once I heard Reverend Al, I was like, oh my God, this is God. Like God is leading me to him. Like he's so good. Maybe if we get to Reverend Al, he'll get my brother's name out there. I looked at him like the Wizard of Oz. I felt like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. And the whole time I got the power inside of me, but I'm thinking of some damn ruby red slippers. And I found that out when we chased this man down in New York City. And we organized. We got West Wednesday T-shirt. We took literature. Like you would have thought we was like a paid organization, and we still don't. We are not under any grant money or anything. It's just my family, and then now my supporters connected with my family. But long story short, we go see him, and he told me all this stuff on the stage. He used my family to be on the stage, but whatever. And he's like, well, after the stage, everything after everything is said and done, see me and tell me more information about your brother. And I'm gonna help you. And I'm like, oh my God, God is so good. And I'm feeling so good because this is a church man. I believe this is a reverend. This is a man of God. And I'm sitting there and thank God that my cousin had to go to the bathroom. And when he went, he seen this joker trying to sneak out the side door. And then when I ran out there on him, like, hold up, I thought you said you was going to see us afterward. He told his security to tell me back up and wouldn't even let me give him a flyer, told me to give it to the security guard and never called me. And that wasn't I wasn't the first family he did like that. I done met at least 85 family members, and I'm not lying. I can get every last one of them that he dissed, and we can do a show about him. He dissed all of us. So I said all that to say, when they start shouting that defund the police, that's just to take away from the real cause. Because had he would just imagine he would have been saying cell blocks for killer cops, something would have been shaken off. Because now you got a lot of people following him that believe in him, and they would start they would start talking that same language. You get what I'm saying? Language and stuff like that, that's power. So now it's like, okay, defund the police. What that mean? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I get it's a good gesture because, like, okay, you want police officers to be social workers. We all know that they're none of that. But at the end of the day, it's not about none of that. The biggest problem is if you don't put them in a cell block for keep killing us, they're going to keep on doing it. They're going to keep doing it, period. So that's my answer.
So Brock, you raised
go ahead.
You raised a very good point because I was going to come back with two things. I don't want to forget that prosecutor point. Don't let me forget. I want to mention that. But so in the trial, y'all, the jurors have to fill out a questionnaire. This is why your demands have to be so clear. Man, it was crystal clear. So in the questionnaire, they asked what people thought about the demand of defunding the cops. Now, just imagine if they hadn't pushed their way in, because all over the country we've been demanding prosecution of the police. Everywhere you go, I think people are united on that right now, right? So the Black Lives Matter, the liberal forces got in there and he pushes the fun thing. So just imagine if those folks in the questionnaire had to say it in court, right? Imagine that, y'all, had to say in court and in live court and talk about, what do you think of the demand to prosecute the police? You see what I'm saying? What if they had to actually consider that? And that was a demand. But because the defunding folks, police folks kind of snuck in with that thing, they you know what I'm saying? So they get to asking a questionnaire rather than asking, what do you think of prosecuting, which is a whole different thing, right? Can you imagine that conversation in the voir dire? Well, I think most people say, I do think the police should go to jail, but the defund the police leads you down some, some stray path, because people responding to it in all different kind of ways. They don't think the police should, they don't know if it should be defunded, but most people agree that the police should be prosecuted. So anyway, the demands count, y'all, because when they're repeated, we force people up. We force people, force people to kind of take a step up. We want justice. What does justice look like? Prosecution of the police. And so that questionnaire, sitting in that court, listening to them ask that question from the questionnaire, reminded me of what I already knew. The demands, what you demand is important, right? What you ask for is very important. That's why it's clear that we demand that the police be prosecuted, and we demand that the cases be reopened. That way, don't get confused at all about what we want. That's why at the beginning of a protest and the end, I always repeat the demands. You always make a habit of that, because the writers don't really want to write what you're talking about. They have a preconceived notion about it, about what you're doing, and then they'll hear all kind of speeches, and so they don't really want to know what you're talking about a lot of times. So you have to keep drilling it. I drill it home. We have protests, I drill that sucker home. The other point I want to make is, I'm glad you mentioned the thing about the prosecutor, sister, because all over the country, I was thinking in LA, Baltimore, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, there were big fights around getting a certain person in the attorney general seat, right? Usually a progressive Black person. And in every one of those cases, we wind up getting disappointed. And so why do you hit on it? Because it's not just that individual making those decisions. Here in Minneapolis, got to get rid of Mike Freeman. Well, the senator, what's her name, was in the seat before. She's the one that railroaded Mayan Burrell, right? So it's the seat, it's the system, right? Nobody, the attorney generals aren't making decisions by themselves, y'all. The prosecutors, they don't just hire, say we're gonna allow Tawana to be the attorney, the prosecutor, right? She's gonna come in and do her thing and let everybody go free. They'll put you out before you let everybody go free, right? Or before you prosecute all the cops. They're not going to let you do that. Then Marilyn Mosby ran into that, she may not have had a heart in it on some level, but she ran into that too. The system told her, no, man, you can't do that in this job. So we have to be clear, because we fight, and a lot of energy gets spent, right, y'all, on trying to get the right prosecutor in, and then at the end of the day, look at New York. People fought really hard to get that attorney general in, right? There was a big fight, lots of energy was put in it. And her very first case, she didn't even have the guts to try to push it herself. She turned it over to a grand jury. And the famous saying is that you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. She couldn't get this grand jury to indict those cops who put the hood over this guy and killed him, right? So I'm glad you mentioned that, Tawanda. When you run up against, I think when you bump your head against something, you ought to learn from it. Because I understand a lot of people who are fighting for their families, justice for their families, they still think and have belief and hope that the system still works on some level. We just got to keep fighting and push for this bill and that bill. But the truth of the matter is that it doesn't. At the end of the day, we got to keep demanding that the police be held accountable. The only way you get them to move is by getting in the street, and ultimately by if enough of us get in the street, like Malcolm used to say, long enough and hard, and we fight long enough and dedicated enough, we will change this whole thing. But the system itself, the same system that killed your loved one, is not the same system that's going to give you justice. You may get a little modicum of it every once in a while, but it's not in their interest to give you justice. And some of us have to learn it the hard way, like Tawanda was making a point. But when you learn it, like Tawanda has, and don't look away from it. So you just said it. You're right. It's the system. It's this low down, dirty, filthy, rotten system. That's our problem at the end of the day.
So Why don't we open up the floor for any questions and comments from the audience? We got some special guests here, so you're never gonna, you probably won't get an opportunity like this in Boston, at least anytime in the near future. So encourage you to ask your questions now.
Yeah. Please ask questions about what's going on in Minneapolis because so much is going on. I probably don't know because you know me, I'm always trying to pull the political stuff out of, but there's other stuff going on. Let me just say this, Brock. You did made so show you how the press works. Did you all know that 2 weeks? Part of the reason why this city went up 2 weeks before George Floyd was murdered by the cops, a man named Donald Lewis was murdered. I should pull up the story and send it to you. Was murdered by a guy named Anthony Trifoletti. Look that thing up. We wrote a piece about it in the Spokesman. The rest of the press is paid. So they got in a car accident. The black guy drove off. They both drove off. When the black guy drove off, the white guy followed him in his truck. And so the black guy pulled off the side of the road after a while because it was obvious the dude was following him, or it seemed like. And so he got out of his car. He stopped his car. The white guy pulled up behind him. And he got out of his car as if to say, well, why you follow me, right? So he gets out of his car and pretty much is asking him what. The white guy gets out of his car, takes a cop stance with his gun and shoots and kills the black guy. I'm not exaggerating this. And he said to the police, he felt like he was threatened, as if he was a cop, right? And he said that he felt like the black guy was reaching under his shirt for something, and he killed this man. Guess what? A week ago, earlier this week rather, he was in trial and they could not convict him. There was a mistrial because people in the jury, yes, and it was a cold-blooded killing. Yes, cold-blooded killing, and they couldn't find their way to convict. We live in a dangerous society because they don't tell us. There could have been a black person or two that held that jury up. I don't know. Somebody hung the jury. Some racist probably hung the jury. It's a cut and dry case is why the state charged him, right? He shot and killed dude. He didn't have no weapon on him. There was no fight, nothing. My man was a long ways from him. He took a stance, aimed at him, fired, and he's dead. And we're gonna blow that up in our paper. We're gonna put that out there because we want people to understand the context where we're living. You know what I'm saying? Lots of change, but on some level, not much has changed, right? This is still, we live in the United States where black people still are oppressed. And people still, because of all the other stuff going on, I think it distracts us from the reality that, we're oppressed people and the population has been propagandized. And there's still a lot of people that hate us. There's still a lot of racists that are undercover. In Boston, you have a whole different kind of racism. In Baltimore, you have a different one. Minneapolis, in Miami, but it's still racism. The system still exists, and it's still anti-black, like the sister said, anti-brown. It's anti-woman. It's anti-LGBTQ as well, which is why we have to come together. That's why us working together is so important. It's the only way we can defeat them. But anyway, can you believe that they let that guy get away with murder? And that's what the headlines say. White guy gets away with murdering black. I'll be as sensational as I can, right? And then explain it.
Yeah, that's outrageous. So is there anybody else who has any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Go ahead.
So,
can you introduce yourself too?
Yeah, my name's Mason. Hey, what's going on? So my question is, isn't the militarization of the police an impediment to prosecuting them? And so defunding the police is, necessary? Because like, how often is an army soldier going to be prosecuted for killing people?
Well, my friend, if you don't ask for them to be prosecuted, so we don't put forth demands based on what we can win or not. We put forth the demand based on what it is that we want to see happen, right? And that's why I said you got to reach high. If you push something long enough, you'll get it. For example, my friend, the system was not going to jail Derek Chauvin. You realize that? He had already begun to write up a report that blamed George Floyd for his own death. If it wasn't filmed and it wasn't a protest, we wouldn't have a prosecutor. So we demand prosecution because that's what you want to see happen. If the police are put behind bars, one, forces the system to do something it doesn't want to. Two, it sends a message to the cops that there may be consequences. So if you defund them, right, it has nothing to do with anything. And then defund is a nebulous term. It's just like I'm a killer. And you say, well, let's take away a few of his resources. I'm a killer and I got 12 guns. Let's take away 2 of them. Well, I can take them other 10 guns and blow a lot of brains out. so defunding police doesn't really get to anything at all when you think about it. It doesn't get to, it doesn't stop the police from doing what they do. Right? It even defunding, it doesn't stop them from carrying out the mission. It doesn't force the system to hold them accountable. It just takes a little money away from them. And then when it actually gets played out, you only take a very small sliver. In LA got played out and they took a point something % of the budget. So, and then when the smoke all cleared, what happened? The police are still out kicking everybody's behind. So it doesn't change any function. It's a liberal demand that actually works. What it really does, it works against getting what people really want, which is you want the police to be held accountable. Defunding the police does not force them to be held accountable. And it doesn't work anyway. They don't do it anyway. And in Minneapolis, the little Black Visions Collective, a little offshoot of Black Lives Matter, got out in front because they're liberal and they had the ear to press and that kind of stuff. So they threw it out there. Ironically, the city council, guess how they interpreted it? The city council interpreted it as them disbanding the police. Now that would work, disbanding. In fact, here in the cities, the liberals, the progressive liberals are, to their credit, trying to disband the police department as we know it and create something that's more civil. That's even a better step than defunding. Defunding means nothing. You'll take away a little bit of their money. If you want to defund something, because the reason it came up was they said, well, you can, instead of putting money in the police, we can put it in the social services. Well, if we're really serious about that, then we should demand that the military budget be defunded, that the defense budget. You know what? These social programs that liberal Black folks are talking about, if you demanded that we get 15, 20% of that budget, we'd have a lot more social services. So anyway, so that's my response to you, Brother Cassidy. Defunding police actually misses the point.
Why don't we take some more questions and comments from anyone else? It's wide open.
Mr. Wanda, can I jump back in real quick?
Go ahead, Tawanda.
So I wanted to say, and I agree with Mel, it's pointless. It's pointless. To me, it's a big distraction. One thing has nothing to do with anything else. People got to keep in mind that, back in the day when Black people were killed, when we were killed and hung from trees and lynched and things like that, you think about the Ku Klux Klan. We now have to think about the police, and I call them the Blue Klux Klan because it's not about their skin color, because multiple race people killed my brother. He was murdered by 11 to 15 killer cops, okay, by different races. You get what I'm saying? But it's that cold blue silence wall. And then another thing I wanted to tap on that I forgot to tap on, just like what Brother Mel said, to me, like, if you don't have any demands, that means nothing. It's just like prayer without works mean nothing. I can lay in my bed all night long and say, oh my God, please take care of my bills. Please do this. Prayer without work is nothing. My light's gonna be off. They've been and took my home from me. You get what I'm saying? I wouldn't be a homeowner. I have to get out here, pray too, but I have work to do. So to me, actions without demands mean nothing. And that's why we need to keep our demands clear. Not defund the police, but put killer cops in cell blocks. Thanks again.
Yo, thank you for that. I appreciate the answer.
Right on. Anybody else? Oh, we got one here. That's Brian from Cincinnati.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I was watching on Facebook and then realized I thought I had to just watch and realize I could participate. It's a great program so far. I wanted to say something about the defund question, because I think there's another side of this, which is it's not simply the demand of defund that's a problem, because in a different context, calling for things that make it harder for cops to kill people I'm not going to say I'm against that. The problem is the campaign. The campaign is being organized in a conscious manner to counterpose itself to the fight for convictions, to cover up and become the centerpiece instead of demanding convictions and jailings. And it comes from a layer of people, or at least it's championed by a layer of people who have pretended to be the leaders of the fight against police brutality for 7 years. But in reality, their position the whole time has been, we're not for prosecuting cops and we're not for convicting cops because we're not for sending them to jail. Think about the logic of that. Those are the people who are at the front of these actions, leading young people and others who are viciously in favor of sending these people to jail. But the people who claim to be the leadership, no, they don't claim to be the leadership. They claim it's leaderless. But in the background, their leadership is silently disorganizing the fight for families and for their demands to jail cops. That is a insidious reality that we face inside the movement. It's conscious and it's insidious. And one of the worst things about it is it captures the imagination of young people who haven't thought it all the way through, who say, yeah, I hate cops, F them. So yeah, we should get rid of them. If we could defund them, then maybe that would save everybody. But here's the thing. If cops have M60s and tanks and they run down the streets, and if they use them against us and go to jail for using them, they'll be less likely to use those. Also, if they don't have a single weapon, but they're allowed to kill us with no consequences, then damn it, they'll strangle us. And if there's less of them, but none of them are held accountable, then you got a few less cops doing a lot of brutal stuff. So at the heart of this, that's why this question of you got to make them pay, there's got to be a punishment, and it's got to be a strict punishment, because if you take, and I'll stop here, if you believe, which I do, that the system and the institution of police is diametrically opposed to the liberation struggles of marginalized people. They were brought into existence to stomp it to nothing. If you believe that that's still their role, then you cannot stop them from what they're doing, because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So why not punish them and make the state punish them for these crimes, which they don't want to go to jail if they commit, when they commit. So to me, that's part of the conversation too. So thank you for letting me interject.
Hi, may I jump?
Yeah, please come in. Hey, Dion.
Oh, hi. It's hey everybody. My name is Diani. I just want to say to everyone here, thank you for having this conversation. What I have found in working with all these other groups, and like you were bringing up about how there are a lot of young kids and they want to be active, and this summer got them into their activism and such, and so having talking about having a list of demands, and myself having to deal with people that want to abolish the police and they're all for it, but they don't know what that looks like or what that sounds like, and how does that work with, if you're going to be out there for actions for people that have been affected personally from police brutality, from police violence, how can they both live together in terms of they might have a demand, but they want to support you, right? But if the message isn't clear, in terms of the demands, and how do you, in terms of your organizing and getting these groups to help you and letting them understand what it is that and creating the list of demands is just another question of how to even start that process, because I know that that basically right now it's just I hear everything that you're saying, and I'm just like, wow, like it is frustrating, and I think going forward and all that, and to demand change in the prosecution of police, that it's a question that I'm gonna work on myself, and dealing with other people, and I just wanted to say thank you for having this conversation. Is all. Sorry. So over.
Thank you for those comments. Anybody else have anything to say? Any questions or comments? I'll just say one thing just about that. One of the things that we have done as one aspect of the leadership of this mass movement is to call this nationwide action that happened, that centers the families and their demands. We're trying to make it very clear to everybody organized. Well, that's also part of what we've been doing over the summer to try to make it very clear, even to among the families, that there's a common demand that everyone supports, that everyone needs, that everyone's fighting for in their own fights. They're fighting for prosecution of the police, or in order to prosecute the police, they're fighting to reopen the case, which is the majority of cases don't even go to trial. So reopen the case, you can't prosecute it if you don't reopen the case. So it's a central demand of this movement. And it also, re-educates people as to the nature of the justice system, how it's set up anyway. It's to a certain degree, it's kind of like a political loophole that they forgot to close up or whatever. We're exploiting it to give another breath of life into all of these fights that have happened going back years, anyways, the main reason we're doing this is to show that how many families there are out here, cases, which literally, it's every nook and cranny of the country. It's much bigger than any organization in this country, any protest group, anybody trying to organize. There's not a bigger group of people than the families fighting and the communities they're connected to. We're trying to unlock that, and we're trying to show. And then the other side of it is we just need to take up these debates. I mean, a lot of this is happening in the absence of folks who know better. You know what I'm saying? And now we have to start to encroach on the space of folks that have been more or less operating without any pushback. But one, we're claiming the moral authority because the moral authority stands with the families who are fighting. If you're not in the right side with them, then there's, it begins to be a problem, especially if this movement is supposed to be about, people who lost their life to the police. So those are a couple ways that, those folks who are fighting along these lines, around these demands, are trying to intervene in this mass movement to bring clarity to it, to bring cohesion and organization, and basically to remake it, to reorganize the whole thing, but centering the families and their demands. So, we just had our initial national action. It was a pretty good first step, but we called another national action on May 24th. So that's coming up, but more than likely there'll probably be some other things in between. So if you agree with this perspective, or you want to know more, I encourage you to just keep working with those who are working with the families along this course, and together we will take these debates. A lot of these, we challenge anybody to a debate. So if you have anybody who's pushing the defund abolition perspective, we will take all comers from anywhere around the globe. Anyone who wants to debate, we're ready for that. So, but we're going to bring the debate to them as well while we're waiting. So that's kind of the approach. We just taking a real clear stance. we didn't, just say defund because we heard it on the news or like, it just sounded good, Nah, man, this has been a long-standing fight. The fact is, defund wasn't even pushed during the Mike Brown era, which is interesting. There was more demilitarize was the slogan that got popularized soon, and that was kind of in response to the military stance of the Ferguson police. So defund was not a popular demand of the protests of pre-George Floyd. So you got to wonder why is that? Where did that come from? Did somebody just figure something out? No, this is a tactic. It's a tactic designed by, you got to see who's pushing it too. It's not just radicals and anarchists and people who think they're socialists. It's the liberals that are pushing this. Ayanna Pressley's running on. And as Tawanda is saying, Al Sharpton pushing it. So how do you find yourself in a block with these types if you consider yourself radical or revolutionary? How do you find yourself in this camp? You got to kind of wonder about that. But prosecution of the police, it's pretty simple. It's basic, but it's also the basic demand that exposes the complicity of the two-party system. That none of them want to prosecute the police, a liberal DA or a right-wing DA. Our main demands are on Rachel Rounds here in Boston. She hasn't. I just talked to Rahima, who told me that they've been trying to meet. Rachel Rounds said she'll meet with all the families. She just informed Rahima that they're not going to meet with her now because Rahima's trying to sue, has an open civil suit against, the DAs named in it. So after all this public display of so-called, I'm this, that, and the other, it's the same old story, So this is PR, they are doing a job and they're more, in step with the powers that be and the police and that whole apparatus than they are, concerned about civilians' rights being trampled. That's how I view it. Anyways, any further discussion on this? Pretty good one. All right, well, we want to really thank our guests for coming, Tawanda and Mel Reeves. And we even got a guest from Cincinnati, Brian Taylor, for a cameo. I know all of us are still fighting from where we are to keep pushing this national perspective of uniting families nationwide around these demands and to continue to organize, calling for protests in the streets against all levels of the government. So on those lines too, if people want to stick around, I have a little slideshow, but it is the 6-year anniversary of mass action. 6 years ago today, that's when a section of those who protested in the city of Boston decided we had to organize differently than what was going on at the time. There was a coalition. It was a coalition. It didn't have a name. It was just a coalition, but it involved a lot of different groups. But at that time, there was a debate. Some people thought the protests were done. We just need to focus on, panel discussions. And we were arguing, that the protests aren't done. We need to keep staying in the streets. This is after they had subsided a bit. This was after the Mike Brown, Eric Garner decision. And then we decided, we need to keep calling actions. And moreover, we need to take them from out of downtown. We need to take this protest to the hood where the people, where this is happening the most. And before we could even do that, a lot of people didn't want to see that happen. Some people say, oh, no, you can't call a protest in the hood. People will shoot each other. And this is coming from a BLM organizer, So well, she wasn't BLM at the time, but she later became, you know, she fit right in. But anyways, what happened though, when we organized the protest and we went to the hood, let me see. What happened was this happened, which y'all pretty much know the picture. This happened. All along the street, people came outside the doors. They knew, everybody knew the message. These kids knew what time it was. They're all probably pushing teenage years now, but this was 6 years ago, a little over 6 years ago. And yeah, we'll just prove that now the hood wants to hear this, wants to get organized, but Black Lives Matter and this kind of other methods aren't necessarily the best way to do it. So you got to bring it to them. So anyways, along those lines, yeah, Mike Brown, Ferguson, this was the earlier, this was the other thing. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. There was a debate over what kind of organizing was going to lead this protest. Was it going to be, if you want to build a mass movement and win people over to your point of view, should you do this? Get a handful of your friends and stop the interstate? Even better, like handcuff yourself to a cement barrel? Or should you do this? This was actually the biggest protest of the pre-George Floyd era. It was the Mlk March, New York. I don't know, tens of thousands. I know Jose is on here. He was there. He could attest to it. But one of the largest demonstrations, and it just showed the power of uniting so many people in the streets together. We advocated for this method and not this method, which was kind of a lot of what you'd see protests would be reduced to from that period of time. But it was popular, you know. At the height, you had spontaneous actions of middle school students. That was 6 years ago. So it was a little bit of a harbinger of what was coming. So anyways, yeah, we got involved in a lot of cases. I'm just going to go run through the Walter Scott case. Yeah, the Baltimore, this was when we decided our second action, right after we called the first one in the hood. People said all they wanted was, to do panel discussions. Then Baltimore broke out. Tawana and them got busy. And this is what we did in Boston in response. A few of us cities, I know Cincy was part of that call, but we called an emergency solidarity action. This was one of the biggest actions in the city at that time. And that was kind of our coming out party where, mass action really became established in the city. And then other cases started happening. So, Osama Rahim happened after that. And for a while, the family was kind of told to stay quiet. You see Rahima in there in the middle. But this was national news at the time. No protest really took place because of the terrorism stigma. And then, yes, we went to Cleveland. We also moved out nationally from the jump. And that's where we started to meet a lot of these families. And also where we first began to really see the problem of Black Lives Matter as an organization and why it was not, it did not speak for the mass movement. But they did do us a solid by bringing some of these people to the conference, which as soon as they brought them to the conference, they pretty much ignored them the rest of the conference and had all these other workshops on everything but the fight against police brutality. And, us knowing what time it was, we knew that this was where we needed to be. And this is where we hung out and got to meet a lot of those families from that point on. Like Tony Taylor right here played a key role in working with us. to the point where we're at now. We were the first group to do the Say Her Name, demonstration here in Boston. That was some of Sandra Bland's sorors came out in support. That was a real powerful action. Yes, so we've already talked about this, brother, but we went down right after the Dylan Roof stuff. We called an anti-KKK rally in Boston, one of the first of that era. I mentioned Sam DuBose too. That's a big fight that was going on in Cincinnati at the time. But we met this brother. This is Muhyiddin Baha in Charleston, South Carolina, who was later killed. So they don't know exactly why he was killed, but he was one of the people who got this video to the family. The person who shot the video came to Muhyiddin, got him that video, and he was able to safely get it to the family, which led to, that was really the first conviction of after Mike Brown was killed. Although he pled out, so he wasn't convicted by the court itself. A lot of stuff we did, I'm just gonna skip ahead because we're gonna roll out after this. A lot of different cases. This is all from like the first 3 years of our existence. Then there was one of the other big inflection points was the Alton Sterling, Philando Castile situation where you had 2 high-profile cases happening within a few days of each other. And that was kind of nationwide. There was an upsurge, many big protests. This is one of our biggest from the previous era. And the Funk the Police, we were doing that back then. So all those things we brought back in this era. I would say once you got to Terrence Crusher, Keith Lamont Scott, that was kind of like the last kind of big protest of the Mike Brown era. And it was just kind of one of those things where you had paid protesters or basically sent into the area to kind of like mislead that fight. Darren Seals, we're going to be talking about him, but we, through one of his associates, have been working with him. We were actually in the process of inviting him to come speak. Like literally days before he was murdered. And we ended up doing a tribute to him later on. But he's one of the first who called out publicly Black Lives Matter and the hijacking of the Ferguson movement. He's an important figure for people to read about if you're not familiar. And then Terrence Coleman happened. And ever since we've been working with Hope, with the other families. Yeah, little known cases that kind of went away. This brother, he was assaulted by a police officer just for walking. And then they put charges on him. He was able to beat the charges, but he didn't want to pursue it further. He more or less was intimidated. But this is a Cambridge police officer still walking around above the law. There was actually 2 witnesses that also videotaped this incident, and the judge basically they also got charged for interfering with an arrest, and the judge kind of basically said if you if you don't pursue this, they'll let you off, and they went for that too. So it was kind of disheartening, but it just shows you the kind of things that go on, not just with the police, but the judges. They were all part of it. In Cambridge, of all places. Cambridge is supposed to be like the Communist Republic of Cambridge, they call it.
They were also made. They were also made to apologize to the police officer.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was what, 2018 or something?
I think so.
Yeah. So the MLK March for Justice was like our 3rd one. That's one thing that we kept going in the Freedom Winter. So, and we had a summit against police brutality, which kind of really set the stage for kind of the era we're in. But we brought in Mike Brown and Tony Taylor and really had a really frank discussion about Black Lives Matter. This is 2017, so you see a lot of the media coverage about BLM that's happening now. Like this was something we were very aware of years before it's come to light. But it wasn't a very popular idea to say that BLM doesn't speak for the mass movement, or is not the leadership, or is a misleadership. That wasn't popular before. What do we have? We had a couple other things. We kicked out some folks in our group who basically supported Black Lives Matter on the low. So it just shows how a lot of these political organizations didn't even get it either, and were part of the problem. Now, Jordan Edwards, that was interesting. This was now also the Trump era. Trump had gotten elected, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen. But Jordan Edwards was the first one killed under the Trump era, and there was no big protest that took place. But actually, that cop was charged and convicted, I believe. We started the podcast, the first attempt. We still got that episode. It's just on audio. We interviewed Tony Taylor back in that era when we were trying to get things going. With the Philando Castile verdict, yeah, that was kind of the last of protests on a nationwide basis. We had a protest here. It wasn't very big, but it was maybe about a few hundred people. So from this era, or some of us went to St. Louis on the invite of Tony Taylor to celebrate her son's anniversary of when he was killed. And then I know met up with some of the folks from Cincy while we were there. But while we were there, the Charlottesville thing broke out. So yeah, I guess I'll skip through some of this. This is Mary Holmes. We talked about her in the March. She won a case against Jennifer Amiot Garvey. You see Amiot Garvey in cuffs, who actually she had to serve a couple of months in jail for assaulting Mary Holmes. And Mary's still around, she moved out of the city, but we stay in contact. And yeah, she just showing an example of standing up, but she paid a price for it too. Okay. So yeah, we've been out in front of the DA's office. This was one of the ones that we did that time. It must have been like 2018. I don't know if Rachel Rounds had started yet, but we got no response from the DA. We've been supporting David Wright this whole time. Yeah, that was the Stockley thing was in St. Louis. Just another development in the fight. That was supposed to be Ferguson 2.0. It was pretty wild. Where the case actually got reopened from evidence that was brought to light, but they ended up charging the officer. He did not have a jury trial, and the judge, before he made his decision, immediately after he made his decision, he left town and resigned. But basically, he didn't convict the officer. But here you have, the situation in Ferguson kind of messed up with, a lot of money running through that city and distorting the protest movement, where a lot of protesters were getting paid. And that's still kind of the aftermath that exists out there. Some of the things Darren Seals was, trying to expose. So during this lull period, there weren't many protests around the country. So we focused on the Take a Knee phenomenon, which was kind of the only thing keeping this issue in the mainstream media. We were able to do a few protests that involved some folks. This one, we marched to Mara Healey's house. Still, then same demands were demanded now: reopen the cases, prosecute the police. Then the Black Identity Extremists memo came out, which focused on people organizing protests around police brutality and around the court cases related to those cases. Pretty interesting. And we had one of our annual March for Justice on MLK Day. But this led up to the Take a Knee Nation Conference. It was kind of like the precursor to the Mother's March that we were able to do during the George Floyd era. But we got, I don't know, maybe almost a couple dozen families from around the country to meet in Minneapolis because the Super Bowl was happening that weekend. And we, had a pretty successful conference. But that was definitely a period where we're still, we had much less influence than we have today. But it just showed that even in that era, we were working towards this day that's going on right now. So, that was probably around when Stephon Clark was killed. We had one more demonstration in 2018. Not one more demonstration. That's the day that it was April 4th. That's when Hope filed her civil suit against the government, which she's still in the middle of right now. And then, there was something that happened in Cincy. So now we're in this current era that we're in, which is 2019 and just a lot of the things we did over the last 8 months. Just a lot more people getting involved. One of the last things we did before the George Floyd era really took off was we were part of a nationwide gathering in Las Vegas with a couple of the families from here. And it was really a lull. It was a lull to the point where, there just wasn't much of a protest movement going on. But even then we were confident that, that wasn't the end of it, but that it was destined to rise again. Little did we know how soon it would or with what force and veracity it would rise. But here we are. And in the midst of all that, we had been weakened, but we were ready for the moment, ready to act when the moment came. Once we found out about George Floyd, we took it took us about a day to decide, and then we gave ourselves a day to organize. But we called an action within 4 days of the incident, and that was the first action in Boston. But all that led to the Mother's March, where we're working with families nationwide on a level we never had before. And really the same demands we've been raising this whole time, though. Jail the killer cops, reopen the cases. And we were able to take that down to DC, coming out of that, where we did, successfully lead thousands of people to the DOJ. But we weren't successful in making Al Sharpton change what he was going to talk about or what they were going to push from the Lincoln Memorial. They were pushing the Floyd Act, which is, a lot of the defund, that kind of idea. the David Wright case, outrageous. We finally came to court, and one of the outrageous things, he won his appeal over his sentence, and when he came to the resentencing hearing, they gave him more time, which is a scandal, which he's currently fighting right now. We're helping the family. This was just more pictures from Mother's March. That was a special moment right there. The sounds of blackness serenading all these mothers from across the country. That's the memorial, George Floyd Memorial. A lot of the families, that's the Mother's March itself. Probably one of the more powerful marches in Minneapolis, I would imagine. This is from DC, out in front of the DOJ. This is on a national mall where we had our own setup. We had our own permit. Sharpton tried to shut us down, but he couldn't. So we were just sitting there with our reopen the case banners, attracting attention. All right, so other than that, Freedom Winter, just we're heading into Freedom Spring now, but we expect more of the same, But this time around, it's not just going to be local actions. Here in Massachusetts, the families are pretty much united, fighting as one force. So they're just going to be supporting each other's actions. But nationwide, we're going to keep pushing with all these folks on the call and off the call. Thanks for y'all staying, y'all. I was figured y'all check out by now, but since it is the 6-year anniversary, we want to, just want to thank all the supporters that have been around from the very beginning. A lot of y'all are here right now on the call. There's many, many more out there, but just all the people that volunteer their time or resources, or just chose to believe in this effort, because it's been against the grain. It's been very unpopular among certain circles that didn't want to see it happen. But now, I think we're hitting a level where, whether you want to see it or whether you don't, you got to deal with mass action. We're kind of here to stay. And we have no intentions of going anywhere. Now we're going nationwide is basically what's about to happen. So so this is, literally 6 years ago today. We would have never believed that, we would have done all this, but we've done it not alone, but together with, our co-thinkers nationally and all the supporters here in Boston, and especially the families, the fighting families around the country have made this something that, is growing now, and seems to be on its way to growing even more. So I guess that's all I have. If anybody else wants to say anything before we sign out, floor is yours. No? All right, well, I encourage anybody who's interested in the group to leave us your information. Direct message us if we don't have your info already. And let's just keep the pressure on. It's going to be a very big year. We're just only in the first quarter of it, but there's plenty left of 2021, and I know we all got something more to say. So the way we sign off most of the time is till we meet again, y'all. Mass action.
Till we win.
Till we win. Till we win.
Till we win.
All right.
Please.
Salute everyone.